The text message arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, which should have been my first red flag. Family dinner tomorrow, 7 p.m. Dress appropriately. Mother. My name is Layla, and in 28 years of disappointing my family, I'd learned that late-night summons meant one of two things. Someone was dying, or someone needed money. Since the Warrens had plenty of the latter, I figured it was the former. I stared at my phone screen, the blue light harsh against my studio apartment's darkness. Around me, towers of unpaid bills created a paper fortress of shame. Student loans, credit cards, medical debt from when I'd gotten pneumonia, and couldn't afford to miss work. The numbers swam together into one impossible sum, $847,000. Dress appropriately, right. No social media posts, no discussions with friends or colleagues. What if something goes wrong? Define wrong. Miscarriage, complications. What if I can't carry to term? Deborah's expression didn't change. Payment is contingent on successful delivery of a healthy infant. Any complications would void the financial agreement. My stomach dropped. So if I lose the baby, I get nothing? You'd receive compensation for medical expenses incurred up to that point. But the primary payment requires fulfillment of the contract. Palmer appeared in the doorway, her face glowing with excitement. How are we doing in here? Just reviewing the terms, I said. Palmer settled into the chair beside me, her perfume overwhelming in the small space. Isn't this exciting? We're going to have a baby. Layla's baby, I corrected quietly. Well, technically, it would be our baby, Deborah interjected. The contract establishes clear parental rights. You'd have no legal claim to the child. I understand that. Do you? Palmer leaned forward. Because I need to know you won't get attached. This isn't your baby, Layla. It's mine. The words hit like a slap. I said I understand. Good. Palmer smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Because I've already started planning the nursery. Nicholas and I picked out the most beautiful crib. I signed the papers that afternoon, my signature looking small and insignificant next to all those legal terms. As I walked out of Deborah's office, Palmer caught my arm. Thank you, she whispered. You don't know what this means to me. But something in her voice made me wonder if I knew what it meant to her at all. That evening, I met my friend Kirk at our usual dive bar in Somerville. He taught high school biology and had been my closest friend since college, one of the few people who knew about my family's dysfunction. So let me get this straight, Kirk said, nursing his beer. They're paying you 6 figures to have Palmer's baby? That's the plan. And you trust them to actually pay you? I stared into my wine glass. They're my family. Layla. Kirk's voice was gentle but firm. When have they ever put your interests first? This is different. They need me. Exactly. Which makes you vulnerable. He pulled out his phone. I've been doing some research since you texted me. Did you know that in Massachusetts, surrogacy contracts aren't always enforceable? What do you mean? I mean, if they decide not to pay you, your legal recourse might be limited, especially with all those confidentiality clauses. My chest tightened. They wouldn't do that. Wouldn't they? Remember when they promised to pay for your graduate school, then changed their minds because you chose social work instead of business? I did remember. I'd been accepted to Harvard's MSW program, and they dangled the tuition money like a carrot until I'd already committed. Then Father decided my career choice was insufficiently ambitious and cut off funding. This is different, I repeated, but the words felt hollow. Kirk leaned across the table. Look, I'm not saying don't do it. That money could change your life. But maybe have a backup plan? What kind of backup plan? I don't know yet, but these people have screwed you over before. Don't let them do it again. Later that night, I sat in my apartment researching surrogacy laws and horror stories. The internet was full of cautionary tales. Intended parents who disappeared, contracts that fell through, women left with medical bills and empty promises. Then I found something interesting. A fertility clinic in Cambridge that offered anonymous egg donation services. The website mentioned that some surrogacy arrangements used donor eggs when the intended mothers weren't viable. I thought about Palmer's medical issues, about father's obsession with Warren blood, about mother's constant lectures on family legacy and bloodlines. What if there was a way to protect myself that they'd never see coming? I picked up my phone and dialed the clinic's number. Reproductive Health Associates. How can I help you? Hi, I said, my heart pounding. I'd like to ask about your egg donor program. The fertility clinic smelled like antiseptic and false hope. I sat in the waiting room, surrounded by couples holding hands and women clutching folders of medical records. The receptionist had handed me a stack of forms thicker than a phone book. First time? Asked the woman next to me, her voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, you? Third cycle. She gestured to her swollen belly. Finally took. Dr. Martinez called my name 20 minutes later. Her office was warm and comfortable, designed to put anxious patients at ease. So you're interested in surrogacy with donor eggs, she said, reviewing my paperwork. That's becoming more common. Are the intended parents having difficulty with egg quality? Something like that. The process is straightforward. We match donors based on physical characteristics, medical history, and any specific preferences the intended parents might have. I leaned forward. What if they don't know about the donor? Dr. Martinez paused. I'm sorry? What if the intended parents think they're using their own genetic material, but the surrogate arranges for donor eggs separately? That would be highly irregular and potentially illegal, depending on the contracts involved. But hypothetically? She set down her pen. Hypothetically, if a surrogate had medical power of attorney over the IVF process and the intended parents weren't present during the procedure, there could be gaps in oversight. But I strongly advise against any deception in these arrangements. I nodded, filing that information away. The IVF process began 2 weeks later. Palmer insisted on driving me to every appointment, chattering nervously about baby names and nursery themes, while I sat in the passenger seat, hormone injections making me nauseous. I was thinking about family names, she said, as we pulled into the clinic parking lot. Maybe Randall for a boy, after father, or Angela for a girl. Those are nice names. Nicholas wants something more modern, but I think tradition is important. This baby will carry on the Warren legacy. The irony made me sick to my stomach, but I blamed it on the hormones. Dr. Martinez performed the embryo transfer on a Tuesday morning. Palmer and Nicholas waited in the lobby while I lay on the examination table, my feet in stirrups, staring at the ceiling tiles. Everything looks good, Dr. Martinez said. Now we wait. 2 weeks later, the pregnancy test came back positive. Palmer screamed when I called her with the news. Literally screamed, so loud that Nicholas had to take the phone. Congratulations, he said, his voice warm. How are you feeling? Tired? Nauseous? Normal pregnancy stuff, I guess. Palmer's already called mother and father. They want to take you to dinner to celebrate. The celebration dinner was at their country club, naturally. I sat between Palmer and Chloe while mother regaled the table with stories about her own pregnancies. I gained exactly 22 pounds with each of you girls, she said, cutting her salmon into precise pieces. The key is discipline. Layla will be very disciplined, Palmer said, her hand resting possessively on my arm, because showing up in my target clearance clothes to their marble palace was apparently a crime against humanity. The next evening, I stood outside their Beacon Hill townhouse, smoothing down my one decent dress, a black number I'd worn to job interviews and funerals with equal lack of success. The brass knocker gleamed like it had been polished that morning. Knowing my mother, it probably had been. Palmer opened the door before I could knock. Layla! She pulled me into a hug that smelled like expensive perfume and felt like a performance. You look like you. Thanks? I stepped inside, immediately feeling underdressed. Won't you? Of course. No alcohol, no caffeine, no processed foods. I've already spoken to Dr. Martinez about your diet plan. I looked up from my untouched plate. My diet plan? Well, you're carrying precious cargo now. We need to make sure you're taking proper care of yourself. Father raised his wine glass. To Layla, for giving our family the greatest gift imaginable. Everyone toasted except me. I was too busy processing the word precious cargo. The next few months blurred together in a haze of doctor's appointments, dietary restrictions, and Palmer's increasingly invasive check-ins. She texted me every morning asking about my symptoms, every afternoon asking what I'd eaten, every evening asking if I'd taken my vitamins. How's our baby today? Became her standard greeting. Fine, I'd always answer, though the possessive pronoun grated on me more each time. By the second trimester, Palmer had keys to my apartment. For emergencies, she explained, letting herself in one Saturday morning while I was still in my pajamas. I brought you some organic groceries. She unpacked bags of expensive health food while I watched from the couch, too tired to protest. I also scheduled you for a 3D ultrasound next week. Nicholas and I want to see the baby's face. Don't you think that's a little much? Palmer's smile faltered. I'm sorry. Are you complaining about receiving excellent prenatal care? No, because if you're not happy with the arrangement, we can always revisit the contract terms. The threat hung in the air between us. I thought about my mounting medical bills, my empty bank account, the promise of $100,000 that suddenly felt very far away. I'm not complaining, I said quietly. Good. Palmer's smile returned. Because this baby is the most important thing in the world to me, more important than anything else. She looked directly at me when she said it, and I understood the message perfectly. The baby was important. I was not. That night I called Kirk. How's the pregnancy going? He asked. Like being a human incubator with a surveillance system. That bad? Worse. I think I made a mistake, Kirk. A big one. Want to talk about it? I looked around my apartment, wondering if Palmer had installed cameras along with her spare key. Not over the phone, I said. Can you meet me tomorrow? Of course. And Layla? Whatever's going on, we'll figure it out. I hoped he was right. Because I was starting to realize that my family's idea of taking care of me looked a lot like imprisonment. The contractions started at 3 a.m. on a Thursday. I called Palmer first, then the hospital, then Palmer again when she didn't answer. We're on our way, she shrieked into the phone. Don't do anything until we get there. Don't do anything. Like I had a choice in how labor worked. By the time they arrived at Mass General, I was already in active labor. Palmer burst through the door wearing a hospital gown over her designer clothes, Nicholas trailing behind with a camera bag. How is she? Palmer asked the nurse, not bothering to look at me. Progressing normally. Should be a few more hours. A few more hours? Palmer's voice pitched higher. But I have the birth photographer coming at noon. The nurse gave her a look that could freeze hell. Babies come on their own schedule, not yours. The next 6 hours were a blur of pain. Palmer's constant commentary, and Nicholas awkwardly trying to stay out of the way. Palmer positioned herself at the foot of the bed like she was directing a movie. Push harder, she commanded during one contraction. You're not pushing hard enough. Palmer, Nicholas said quietly, maybe let the doctors. This is my baby, Palmer snapped. I have every right to make sure everything goes perfectly. The baby finally arrived at 2:47 p.m. A boy, screaming and red-faced and absolutely perfect. Let me see him, I gasped, reaching out. But Palmer was already there, scooping him up before the cord was even cut. "Oh my God," she sobbed, cradling him against her chest. "He's beautiful. He's perfect. He looks just like Nicholas." I watched from the bed as she cooed over him, as Nicholas took photos, as my parents arrived and fawned over their new grandson. Nobody asked how I was feeling. Nobody thanked me for the 18 hours of labor. "What are you going to name him?" Mother asked, stroking the baby's cheek. "Randall Nicholas," Palmer said proudly, "after Father and Nicholas." "Perfect," Father beamed, "a strong Warren name." I lay there, forgotten, while they passed the baby around like a trophy. When I finally asked to hold him, Palmer hesitated. "Maybe after he's settled," she said. "He seems so comfortable with me." The nurse intervened. "All mothers should have skin-to-skin contact after birth. It's important for bonding." "But I'm his mother," Palmer said. The nurse looked confused. "I thought—" "She's the surrogate," Palmer clarified, her voice sharp. "I'm the mother." The nurse handed me the baby anyway, but Palmer hovered so close I could smell her perfume. He was warm and tiny, and when he opened his eyes, they were dark like mine. "He's going to be so spoiled," Palmer laughed, taking him back after barely a minute. "We've already got his room ready, his college fund started, his whole future planned out." 2 days later, I was discharged. Palmer and Nicholas left with the baby that morning, but nobody came to drive me home. I called an Uber and sat in the back seat, my empty arms aching. The check arrived a week later. I stared at it, sitting at my kitchen table surrounded by hospital bills and discharge papers. $20,000. Not $100,000. 20. I called Palmer immediately. "Oh, that," she said when I asked about the discrepancy. "Deborah said there were some adjustments to the final payment." "What kind of adjustments?" "Medical expenses, legal fees, breach of contract penalties." "Breach of contract? What did I breach?" "You gained 32 pounds instead of the recommended 25. You missed 2 prenatal appointments. You refused to follow the meal plan I created." My hands shook as I held the phone. "Palmer, we agreed on $100,000. We agreed on $100,000 for perfect performance. Your performance was adequate. Adequate. Look, Layla, you should be grateful. $20,000 is more than most people make in a year. And you got to be part of something beautiful. I carried your child for 9 months. You carried my child for money. Let's not pretend this was some noble sacrifice." The line went quiet. I could hear little Randall crying in the background. "I have to go," Palmer said. "The baby needs me." She hung up. I sat there staring at the check, at the hospital bills that totaled more than the payment, at the eviction notice that had arrived that morning. Then I called Deborah. "The payment adjustment was clearly outlined in the contract," she said in her crisp legal voice. "Page 47, subsection 12. I want to contest this. You signed a binding arbitration clause. Any disputes must be handled through private mediation, not the courts." The foyer's crystal chandelier cast rainbow fragments across walls lined with oil paintings of dead relatives who'd probably never worked a day in their lives. "Everyone's in the dining room," Palmer said, linking her arm through mine like we were best friends instead of sisters who'd barely spoken in 2 years. "We have something wonderful to discuss." The dining room table could seat 12, but tonight only 5 places were set. Mother sat at the head, her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon, wearing pearls that probably cost more than my annual rent. Father occupied his usual throne at the opposite end, still in his suit from whatever board meeting had consumed his day. My youngest sister Chloe gave me a small wave from across the table, her smile apologetic, and given the confidentiality agreement, discussing this matter publicly would result in additional penalties. "So I have no recourse? You have $20,000 and the satisfaction of helping your family. I'd call that a win. After I hung up, I sat in my empty apartment and cried. Not for the money, though I needed it desperately. Not for the baby, though my arms still ached to hold him. I cried because I'd been so stupid, so naive, so desperate to believe that my family actually cared about me. My phone buzzed. A text from Mother. Palmer's having a christening party next month. You're invited, of course. It would mean so much to have our family's angel there. Angel. That's what they were calling me now. Their angel. I looked at the $20,000 check, then at the pile of bills that would eat up every penny and leave me deeper in debt than when I started. Then I walked to my kitchen drawer and pulled out a folder I'd been hiding there for months. Inside were medical records, legal documents, and a photograph of a young woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. Jayla Lee, 29 years old, Korean American, first-generation college graduate. The egg donor whose genetic material had actually created little Randall. The egg donor my family knew nothing about. I picked up my phone and called Kirk. How do you feel about helping me crash a christening party? Kirk arrived at my apartment with coffee and a laptop bag. He took one look at my face and set everything down on my kitchen table. Okay, what's the plan? He asked. I spread out the documents I'd been collecting. Medical records, egg donor profiles, correspondence with the fertility clinic, and copies of every text message Palmer had sent me during the pregnancy. They screwed me over, I said, paid me $20,000 instead of $100, treated me like hired help, and now they want me to smile and play grateful at their christening party. Kirk picked up Jayla's donor profile. Korean American, first-generation immigrant family. Parents own a small restaurant in Chinatown. This is not what your family had in mind for their precious bloodline. Not even close. Remember Father's rant about maintaining standards when Chloe dated that guy from her community college? The one who worked construction? That's the one. Father said he wouldn't have working-class genes contaminating the family tree. Kirk scrolled through his laptop. I've been researching Massachusetts surrogacy law. The good news is that egg donor arrangements are heavily documented. Every clinic keeps detailed records. And the bad news? Your family could sue you for fraud if they find out you switched the eggs without their knowledge. I laughed bitterly. With what money? They already took everything I had. Fair point. Kirk pulled up a website. Look at this. Your father's company just got a huge government contract. The announcement was in the Globe yesterday. I read over his shoulder. Randall's construction firm had won a $50 million project to renovate historic buildings in downtown Boston. The article mentioned his commitment to preserving Boston's heritage and traditional values. Traditional values, I muttered. That's rich. There's more. Palmer's been posting nonstop on social media about the baby. Look at this caption. Blessed to continue the Warren family legacy with our perfect little prince. He showed me her Instagram. Photo after photo of baby Randall, each one tagged with hashtags like Ach Warren baby family legacy, Arf pureblood, traditional values. She's really leaning into the bloodline thing, Kirk observed. Mother's influence. She's obsessed with genealogy and family purity. She literally has our family tree framed in the hallway, going back to the Mayflower. How do you want to handle this? I stared at the photos of Palmer holding Jayla's biological son, while claiming he was the product of Warren genetics. The christening is in 2 weeks. They're inviting everyone who matters in Boston society. Father's business partners, mother's charity friends, all the people who care about bloodlines and pedigree. And you're going to tell them the truth? I'm going to give them exactly what they gave me. A public humiliation with no way to fight back. Kirk closed his laptop. Layla, are you sure about this? Once you do this, there's no going back. They'll never forgive you. They never forgave me anyway. At least this way, I get to watch them squirm. My phone rang. Chloe's name appeared on the screen. Hey, I answered. Layla, I need to see you. Her voice was shaky. Can I come over? Of course. She arrived 20 minutes later, her eyes red from crying. Kirk offered to leave, but she shook her head. "I know about the money," she said without preamble. "What money?" "The surrogacy payment. I overheard Mother and Palmer talking. They're laughing about how you were so desperate you'd accept anything." My chest tightened. "What exactly did they say?" "Palmer said you were pathetically grateful for 20,000. Mother said it was more than you deserved for being a human incubator." Kirk's jaw clenched. They actually used those words? Worse, Father said Layla should be thanking them for the opportunity to finally contribute something useful to the family. I felt like I'd been punched. They really think that little of me. "There's more." Chloe wiped her eyes. "They're planning to cut you out completely after the christening. Palmer doesn't want you around the baby anymore. She thinks you might get confused about your role." "My role?" "As the hired help." The room went silent. Kirk reached over and squeezed my shoulder. "I'm sorry," Chloe whispered. "I should have said something sooner. I should have stood up for you." "Why didn't you?" "Because I'm a coward. Because I was afraid they'd turn on me too." She looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. "But I can't watch them destroy you anymore. What can I do to help?" I looked at Kirk, then at the documents spread across my table, then at my sister who was finally choosing a side. "Can you get me the guest list for the christening?" "Probably. Why?" "Because I want to make sure everyone who matters is there when I tell them the truth about their precious Warren baby." Chloe's eyes widened. "What truth?" Kirk handed her Jayla's donor profile. Chloe read it, her face going pale. "Oh my God," she breathed. "They have no idea?" "None. And they're going to find out in front of everyone who matters to them. Layla, this will destroy them." "Good. They destroyed me first." Chloe stared at the photo of Jayla, then at me. "You're really going to do this?" "Unless you can think of a better way to get justice." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she folded the profile and handed it back to me. "I'll get you the guest list," she said. "And anything else you need." "Are you sure? Once I do this, they'll know you helped me." Chloe stood up, her spine straighter than I'd seen it in years. "Let them. I'm tired of being afraid of my own family." After she left, Kirk and I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of my family's betrayal and my plan for revenge. 2 weeks, I said. 2 weeks, he agreed. "Are you ready for this?" I thought about Palmer calling me an incubator, about Father saying I was finally useful, about Mother laughing at my desperation. "Layla, darling," Mother's voice could cut glass. "You look thin. Are you eating enough?" "I'm fine, Mother. Sit, sit." Father gestured to the chair beside Palmer. "We have champagne." I glanced at the bottle. Dom Perignon. Definitely not a Tuesday night staple, even for them. Palmer poured me a glass, her hands trembling slightly. "We wanted to celebrate something special tonight." "What's the occasion?" I asked, though dread was already pooling in my stomach. Mother and Father exchanged one of their loaded looks, the kind that had preceded every major family decision of my childhood, usually ones that involved me being shipped off to boarding school or summer camp. I've been ready my whole life. The christening invitation arrived on cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. "The Warren and Olson families request the honor of your presence at the baptism of Randall Nicholas Olson." Below that, in smaller text, "Reception to follow at the Beacon Hill Country Club." I called Palmer to RSVP. "Layla!" Her voice was sickeningly sweet. "I'm so glad you called. I wasn't sure you'd want to come." "Why wouldn't I want to celebrate my nephew's christening?" "Well, you've seemed a bit distant lately. I thought maybe you were having trouble adjusting to your new role." "My new role?" "You know, stepping back, letting Nicholas and me be Randall's parents without interference." I gripped the phone tighter. I was never interfering, Palmer. "Of course not." But sometimes surrogates can get confused about boundaries. It's perfectly natural. Right. Well, I'll be there Sunday. Wonderful. Oh, and Layla? I picked out a dress for you. Something appropriate for the occasion. I'll have it sent over. The dress arrived the next day. Navy blue, high neckline, long sleeves. The kind of outfit you'd wear to a funeral or a job interview where you wanted to disappear. I hung it in my closet and pulled out the red dress I'd actually planned to wear. The one that made me look confident and beautiful. The one that would photograph well when the society pages covered the event. 2 days before the christening, I met Palmer for coffee. She'd suggested it, claiming she wanted to clear the air between us. You look tired, she said, settling into her chair at the upscale cafe she'd chosen. Are you sleeping okay? Fine. Good. I worry about you, you know. This whole experience must have been emotionally challenging. I stirred my coffee slowly. It was. But worth it, right? Seeing how happy you've made Nicholas and me? Absolutely. Palmer leaned forward. I want you to know how grateful we are. What you did was, well, it was like being a vessel for something beautiful. A vessel. Exactly. You carried our miracle, and now you get to watch him grow up knowing you played a part in creating our family. What kind of part? A supporting role. An important one, but supporting nonetheless. Palmer sipped her latte. I hope you understand that going forward, Nicholas and I need to establish our own family dynamic. We can't have outside influences confusing Randall about who his real parents are. Outside influences? You know what I mean. We'll send pictures, of course. Maybe a Christmas card. But day-to-day involvement isn't really appropriate. I nodded slowly. I see. I knew you'd understand. You're so practical, Layla. So good at knowing your place. The words hit like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. Speaking of knowing my place, I said, I've been thinking about what I want to say at the reception. Palmer's smile faltered. Say? Well, there's usually a toast, right? People sharing memories and well wishes. Oh, that won't be necessary. We have a very structured program planned. I'm sure you do, but I think people would be interested to hear from the person who made this all possible. Layla, I don't think... Don't worry, I've prepared something really special. About family and blood, and the importance of knowing where you come from. Palmer's face went pale. What exactly are you planning to say? Just some thoughts about Randall's heritage, his genetic legacy, the importance of understanding his true origins. His origins are perfectly clear. He's a Warren baby. Of course he is. I smiled. That's exactly what I plan to talk about. Palmer stared at me for a long moment. You're acting strange. Am I? I thought I was just finally understanding my place in the family. Which is? You'll find out Sunday. I left her sitting there, confusion and worry written across her face. That evening, Chloe called. I got the guest list, she said. It's everyone. Father's business partners, mother's charity board, the mayor, 3 city councilmen, and half the social register. Perfect. Layla, Palmer called me. She's worried you're planning something. I am planning something. She wants me to talk you out of it. Are you going to? Chloe was quiet for a moment. What you're about to do, it's going to change everything. For all of us. Everything changed the moment they decided to treat me like hired help instead of family. I know, but once you do this, there's no going back. They'll never forgive you. They never forgave me for existing in the first place. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time they treated me like I mattered? When was the last time they included me in anything without wanting something in return? Chloe sighed. You're right. I'm scared. Of what? Of what happens after? To you. To me. To our family. Our family destroyed itself, Chloe. I'm just going to make sure everyone else knows it. Sunday morning, I put on the red dress and did my makeup carefully. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I barely recognized. Confident, determined, dangerous. My phone buzzed. A text from Mother. Looking forward to celebrating our family's blessing today. Wear the dress Palmer sent. Mother. I typed back. Can't wait to share in the celebration. See you soon. Then I picked up the folder containing Jayla's donor profile, the medical records, and the photographs that would destroy my family's carefully constructed lies. It was time to go to church. The church was packed. I slipped into a pew near the back, watching as Boston's elite filed in, wearing their Sunday best. Palmer stood at the altar in a cream-colored dress, holding baby Randall like he was made of spun gold. Nicholas stood beside her, beaming with pride. Mother spotted me immediately. Her eyes narrowed when she saw the red dress, but she was too far away to do anything about it. The ceremony was everything Palmer had dreamed of. The historic church, the renowned pastor, the photographer, capturing every moment. When Pastor Williams lifted Randall over the baptismal font, Palmer dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. We baptize you, Randall Nicholas, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, the pastor intoned. The baby didn't cry. He just stared up at the vaulted ceiling with those dark eyes that looked nothing like Palmer's blue ones or Nicholas's green ones. After the ceremony, everyone moved to the country club for the reception. The ballroom was decorated with white roses and gold accents. A string quartet played in the corner while servers circulated with champagne and canapes. I found my assigned seat at a table in the back, far from the head table where my family held court. The name card read, Miss Layla Warren, in elegant script. Even here, I was an afterthought. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC announced, if I could have your attention for some remarks from the proud grandfather, Randall Warren. Father stood at the podium, adjusting his tie. He looked every inch the successful businessman, silver hair perfectly styled, expensive suit, confident smile. Thank you all for joining us on this blessed day, he began. Today we celebrate not just the baptism of my grandson, but the continuation of a legacy that stretches back generations. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. The Warren family has been part of Boston's fabric for over 2 centuries. We've built businesses, supported charities, and maintained the values that make this city great. Well, Mother began, dabbing her lips with a linen napkin, Palmer and Nicholas have been trying to have a baby for 3 years now. Palmer's face crumpled slightly. The doctors say it's not going to happen naturally. My eggs aren't viable. We've explored every option, Father added. IVF with donor eggs, adoption agencies, but nothing feels right for our family. I sipped my champagne, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It always did with them. That's when we had a wonderful idea, Mother continued, her eyes bright with the kind of enthusiasm she usually reserved for charity galas. Family is everything, Layla. Blood is everything. And you, well, you're young, healthy, and you understand what it means to be a Warren. Palmer leaned forward. Today, with little Randall's baptism, we ensure that legacy continues. He gestured toward Palmer, who stood holding the baby. My daughter Palmer and her husband Nicholas have given us a gift beyond measure. A child who carries our blood, our heritage, our future. More applause. I noticed several city councilmen nodding approvingly. In a world that seems to change daily, it's comforting to know that some things remain constant. Family, tradition, the importance of knowing where you come from and who you are. Father's eyes found mine across the room. Of course, none of this would have been possible without the help of my younger daughter, Layla. She played a vital supporting role in bringing Randall into the world. Polite applause. A few people turned to look at me, smiling benevolently. Layla understood the importance of family above all else. She knew that sometimes we must make sacrifices for the greater good, for the continuation of something larger than ourselves. I stood up. The room went quiet. Father paused mid-sentence, his smile faltering. Actually, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the ballroom, I think there's something important everyone should know about Randall's heritage. Palmer's face went white. Layla, sit down. No, I think people deserve to hear this, especially since Father just gave such a beautiful speech about bloodlines and knowing where you come from. I walked toward the front of the room, the folder clutched in my hands. The string quartet stopped playing. Every eye in the room was on me. You see, I continued, there's something about Randall's genetic heritage that the family hasn't shared with you. Layla, stop, Mother hissed from the head table. The thing is, Randall isn't actually a Warren baby. Not genetically, anyway. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Palmer clutched the baby tighter. What are you talking about? Father demanded. I opened the folder and pulled out Jayla's donor profile. I'm talking about the fact that Randall's biological mother is a 29-year-old Korean-American woman named Jayla Lee. Her parents immigrated here in the 1980s and own a small restaurant in Chinatown. The silence was deafening. That's impossible, Palmer whispered. Is it? Because I have all the medical records right here. The IVF procedure used donor eggs, not Palmer's. Eggs from a woman whose family came to America with nothing but hope and determination. I held up Jayla's photograph. This is Randall's biological mother. First-generation college graduate, works as a nurse, volunteers at a free clinic on weekends. Everything your family claims to value. Hard work, education, service to others, but none of the pedigree you obsess over. Father's face was purple with rage. You're lying. Am I? Because I have the documentation from the fertility clinic, the genetic testing results, and signed affidavits from the medical staff involved. I turned to address the room. You see, my family is very concerned with bloodlines, with maintaining their precious genetic legacy. They've spent years talking about the importance of pure breeding, of keeping the family line untainted by lesser stock. Several guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But here's the beautiful irony, I continued. The baby they're so proud of, the one they claim represents the pinnacle of Warren genetics, is actually the child of hardworking immigrants, people my family would never invite to this country club. Palmer collapsed into her chair, still clutching Randall. You're insane. You're making this up. Am I? Then let's do a DNA test right now. I'm sure you won't mind proving me wrong. The room erupted in whispers. I saw Father's business partners exchanging glances, Mother's charity friends pulling out their phones. The best part, I said, raising my voice over the murmur, is that Randall is going to grow up to be everything his biological mother is. Kind, hardworking, and genuinely good. Everything this family pretends to be, but isn't. I set the folder on the head table in front of Father. Enjoy your legacy. Then I walked out of the ballroom, leaving behind the sound of my family's world crashing down. I made it to the parking lot before my phone started buzzing. Text after text, call after call. I turned it off and drove to Kirk's apartment. He opened the door before I could knock, his face a mixture of concern and admiration. Holy shit, he said. You actually did it. I did it. How do you feel? I sank onto his couch, suddenly exhausted, empty, relieved, terrified. The story's already online. Someone live-streamed part of your speech on Instagram. He showed me his phone. The video had been viewed thousands of times in the past hour. The comments were brutal. Warren family exposed as frauds. Racist family gets what they deserve. That girl is a savage. There's more, Kirk said gently. The Globe wants to interview you. 3 different news stations have called, and someone leaked your father's government contract details to a reporter. My phone rang from the kitchen counter where I'd left it. Kirk glanced at the caller ID. It's Chloe. I nodded, and he answered on speaker. Layla? Chloe's voice was shaky. Are you okay? I'm fine. How's the family? Destroyed. Completely destroyed. Palmer locked herself in the bathroom and won't come out. Mother's having what looks like a panic attack. Father's on the phone with his lawyers. And the baby? Nicholas took him home. He's actually handling this better than anyone. He said he doesn't care about genetics, that Randall is still his son. Good for him. Layla, they're talking about suing you. For fraud, for breach of contract, for defamation. Let them try. I have documentation for everything I said. I know, I wanted you to know what you're up against. What are you going to do, Chloe? I'm leaving. Tonight. I can't stay here anymore. Not after seeing what they did to you. What they've been doing to both of us our whole lives. Where will you go? I have some money saved. I'll figure it out. But I wanted to thank you first. For what? For showing me it's possible to fight back. For proving that they're not untouchable. We talked for a few more minutes before she hung up. Kirk and I sat in silence, watching the news coverage on his laptop. The story was spreading fast. Warrengate was trending on Twitter. Someone had dug up old quotes from Father about maintaining standards and preserving traditional values. The hypocrisy was laid bare for everyone to see. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Is this Layla? The voice was warm, with a slight accent. Yes. This is Jayla Lee. I think we need to talk. My heart stopped. Jayla? I saw the news. About the baby. About what your family did to you. I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to get dragged into this. Don't apologize. What you did was brave. And I want to help. Help how? I'm a nurse. I work with families every day. I know what real love looks like. And what you described at that christening, wasn't it? She paused. I also know what it's like to be underestimated because of where you come from. My parents worked 16-hour days to give me opportunities your family was born with. I didn't know if I should contact you directly. I wasn't sure. You did the right thing. That baby deserves to know his real story someday. Not the fairy tale your family was spinning. What happens now? Now? Now we let the truth speak for itself. We want you to be our surrogate. The champagne turned to acid in my mouth. What? Think about it, Father said, pulling out his phone and sliding it across the table. The screen showed a bank account balance. $100,000. Tax-free. Enough to pay off those student loans and start fresh. My hands shook as I stared at the number. 6 figures. More money than I'd ever seen in one place. You'd be saving our family, Palmer whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. You'd be giving us the greatest gift imaginable. A Warren baby, with Warren blood, carrying on our legacy. We've already spoken to our attorney, Mother added. Everything would be handled properly, legally, and we make sure that little boy grows up knowing he comes from strength, not privilege. The next morning, I woke up to find protesters outside my parents' house. The news vans were there too, along with reporters shouting questions at anyone who entered or left. Father's construction company lost the government contract by noon. The mayor's office released a statement about reviewing partnerships with organizations that don't reflect the city's values of diversity and inclusion. Mother's charity board asked for her resignation. Palmer's social media accounts were flooded with comments calling her out for her racist posts and entitled behavior. But the most satisfying moment came when I checked my bank account. Someone had started a GoFundMe for me. Help Layla rebuild after exposing family corruption. It had raised $50,000 overnight. I called the fertility clinic and asked to speak with Dr. Martinez. I saw the news, she said. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. I want to make a donation to your financial assistance program. for women who can't afford fertility treatments. That's very generous. It's not generosity, it's justice. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine, watching the sunset through my window. My phone had been quiet for hours. The media frenzy was moving on to other stories. Kirk knocked on my door around 8. "Dinner?" he asked, holding up takeout bags. "Perfect." As we ate, he showed me more updates. Nicholas had filed for divorce. Chloe had started a blog about growing up in a toxic family. Father was facing a federal investigation into his business practices. "Any regrets?" Kirk asked. I thought about baby Randall, about the life he'd have now versus the one my family had planned for him. About Jayla, who'd turned out to be everything they weren't. About Chloe, finally free to be herself. "None," I said. "They made their choices. I just made sure everyone knew what those choices were." My phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for giving my son a chance at a real family. Nicholas." I smiled and set the phone aside. Outside, Boston glittered in the darkness, full of possibilities I'd never allowed myself to imagine. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged. You'd be taken care of throughout the entire process. I looked around the table at their expectant faces. Chloe bit her lip, avoiding my eyes. Palmer clutched Nicholas's hand like a lifeline. My parents watched me with the same intensity they'd once reserved for my report cards. "Why me?" I asked quietly. "Why not ask Chloe? Or hire a professional surrogate?" "Because you're family," Mother said simply. "And family takes care of family." The irony wasn't lost on me. 28 years of being the black sheep, the disappointment, the one who never quite measured up. And now suddenly, I was family. I thought about my empty refrigerator, my maxed-out credit cards, the collection calls I'd stopped answering. "I need time to think about it." "Of course," Father said, but his smile was already victorious. "Take all the time you need." As I walked home through the cold Boston night, one thought echoed in my mind. They wouldn't have asked if they weren't desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. I just didn't know yet that I was about to make the biggest one of my life. 3 days later, I sat across from Deborah Zimmerman in her corner office overlooking Boston Harbor. The family attorney had been handling Warren business since before I was born, and her steel gray hair and sharp suit screamed, "Billable hours." "Before we begin," Deborah said, sliding a thick folder across her mahogany desk, "I need you to understand this is a business arrangement. Emotions have no place in contracts." I flipped through the pages, my eyes catching on phrases like gestational carrier, monetary compensation, and confidentiality obligations. The legal jargon made my head spin. "This seems extensive," I said. "Surrogacy is complex. We need to protect all parties involved." Deborah's pen clicked rhythmically. "You'll receive comprehensive medical care, a monthly stipend for expenses, and the full payment upon successful delivery." About that payment, $100,000, as discussed. However, there are conditions. Of course there were. You'll submit to regular medical examinations, follow all dietary and lifestyle restrictions, and maintain complete confidentiality about the arrangement.